Hi again. So we've come to the next part where we've got to now add this interaction that the user is going to do by clicking these cells. We want the user to be able to mark the X's and the zeros on the game. So how do we do that? So we've learned that we can put an on-click event listener. This listens to the event of the click and then calls the function we define. So we could add that to all nine of these things, all nine of these cells. But you know, when you're programming, when you have to start to write more code like 9 times every time, that's really something you want to avoid, because if you make a minor change, you have to change your code in 9 times. And if we had a bigger table with 100 elements, we'll just, forget about it. You're going to be drive yourself crazy trying to maintain it. So just for the principle of the thing, what we could do here is just get rid of all of this. We don't want to. We want all the complexity. We're going to get out of the complexity. We don't want to get a headache trying to update something so many times. So let's do that with our JavaScript. Okay, so we've got at the beginning we're resetting. Maybe what we want to do as well is to draw our cells of the table. So we can write another function and draw table cells, for example. Okay, we don't need any parameters for the function, so we'll just write it like this. We'll prepare it up like this, opening and closing. We indent. What do we want to do here? We want to get the table and we want to put all the rows and all that we want. So we're just going to put it as we had it before, but from JavaScript now. So how does this work? Well, we want to draw each of the rows, and inside each of the rows we want to draw each of the cells. So in the draw table cells function, we want to define the number of rows. I think the number of rows is equal to 3, and we want to go through and we can do a for statement for this loop. For row number we're on now, currently we start at 0. The row number has to always be less than the total number of rows that we want to draw, and we want to increment each time the row number for each loop. And what do we want to do? Well, perhaps we need a function here to get us the HTML that we're going to use, the elements that we're going to paint on the page for each row. Okay, so just pretending for now that we've got that function prepared, which we haven't, but we have row HTML, and we say get row HTML, and we have, at the moment that'll do us, and then we need to build up the table content, don't we? So let's have another variable that'll start off with nothing, table HTML, start with nothing, and when we have each row, with this one we'll have each row, we can just add it on. So we have table HTML. We can use the plus equals here because it's going to be table HTML is equal to what we already have from the table HTML plus the new row we're adding on. So we'll abbreviate it without using that abbreviation, as we can do with numbers, and we add on the row HTML. Let's do the same casing. Good. So once we have all the table HTML, we have to update the table with that content. So we have to get the table element. So we use the document again, get element, or how do we do this? Did we have an ID? Maybe it'll look good to put an ID on it if we haven't already. Yeah, maybe we could put an ID. Okay, so we'll call this is our game board. We'll save that. We'll go back to our JavaScript. Now we can get element by ID. Game board is the ID we've given it. Now we've got the table element, and now we can set its inner HTML, which is the table HTML. Great. So I can save this, and when we load this, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because, well, there's a couple of problems here, but the first thing is that we're not actually calling this function, are we? We're not calling this function draw table cells, so we can do that just before the reset. We can draw the table cells so they are actually on the page before we reset them. Okay, so we've saved that file. We'll go back, we reload. Okay, so we've got another error. This one, it explains exactly what's going wrong, which is very handy. Get row HTML is not defined, so that was the function we said that we could use, but we haven't written yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Here it is, get row HTML. We've given it a name, and we're calling a function that doesn't exist. Get row HTML. Okay, there we go. Get row HTML. What do we have to do here? Well, we can construct also the HTML of each row. How is that going to be? Row HTML starts off. We know it's going to have each row starts with a TR tag, so we could stick that in, and then we have the number of cells. How many cells? We could just put a const num cells for each row is 3. And now we can do our for loop. Let cell num starts off with 0. Oops, 0. Cell num always has to be less than the number of cells, the total number of cells in each row. And we're going to be incrementing again by 1 in each loop or each iteration. Okay, now in each one, how do we get the row HTML? Well, we've got the TR. We want to add on a TD, don't we, on each one? So we can call this cell HTML to keep using the same kind of convention. Now we write TD, close brackets, and we want to close the cell. There's going to be empty as we had it in the other place. And now we do the same as we were doing in the row HTML. We're going to add on row H, the same as row HTML plus cell HTML. And at the end of all this, we're going to have our row HTML, which is what we're expecting the function to return, to then have it in this variable. So we're going to return row HTML. Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. We can refresh this now. There we go. It's now drawing up. We're now drawing up the whole table, the contents of the table from JavaScript. Good. Now, what was this good for? This was good because we could actually now more easily modify if we're drawing our cells the same way every time. We only have it one place. We want to make a modification for every cell. We only have to make that modification in one place instead of 9 or 90 if we had 90 cells. Okay, so it just made we're learning the principle of the thing, you know. So we could do, well, I've forgotten something now that I can see. The row HTML also has to finish with the closing tag, doesn't it? So we can see it actually works, but it's good always to include that because other times it might break our code if we don't close our tags. Okay, so we'll keep going and add on our listener for the clicks on each of the cells. But that'll be for the next video. So see you then.